Hello, this is Dr. Jackalyn with DTP-Leadership Group, and this is Hot Topic Bold Talk. We're going to talk about MAGA and the cult of adolescent power, which is a threat to our democracy. The toxicity of masculinity that Trump exhibits in his leadership is tragic. And I want to show you and describe some of the things that it does. I had a particular article that was written by The Atlantic that I thought was outstanding because it described the insanity that we are living with today. Because at the core, Trump is an adolescent president surrounded by adolescent flunkies who cheer him on and they helped him get into office. That's basically what we're dealing with. I feel grateful that my son is nothing like any of these men, since he has values about our democracy, fights for the rights of other human beings, values difference in people, and makes mature and discerning decisions in his personal and professional life. He's well respected. And let me say that he would never think of valuing or having anything to do with MAGA adolescent behavior. He has ethics, and he's a man with integrity that with a foundation of values that supports honesty and leadership, that appreciates and respects other human beings. Now, that's the kind of man that I think many of the Democrats are. And there are Republicans in my life that are not MAGAs that exhibit those kind of behavior patterns. Tragically, corrupt, immature, hateful President Trump has every behavior of an adolescent male. He wants more of anything, whether it's money, women, power, or adoration. Or if you're his enemy, of course, then you are someone to eliminate. Now, let me stop for a moment and say that I know many men that are young and have no interest in what MAGA Republican men represent, and they did not vote for him. So our weeks are filled with so many insane behavior patterns by Trump, his Justice Department, or any other area he controls. So let's be factual. Let's be factual about what he's doing. Because if we don't look at the facts, then we miss all that happens. And I hope you'll share this podcast with some of your friends and people you know, because they need to understand what is going on. Trump is by far the most corrupt president we've ever had in office. I know a lot about Grant's and Harding's actions that were unethical and illegal, and there have been some actions taken by previous presidents that would be questionable, but none of them have created the conflict of interest that are in the law to prevent presidents from being gifted, bribed, or the president's friends and family members benefit from him being president. No president we've ever had is like what Trump is doing. And he's doing it every day, blatantly, in front of all of us. So I plan on writing an entire podcast about the multiplicity of Trump's corrupt actions, but I'm going to present some today to introduce what all he's doing. You all know from my previous podcast that when the stock market was sinking and due to his tariffs, he was at the golf course with many of his friends from various countries, Saudi Arabia and others. Today, one of the things that I know is that today the New York Times has announced, and this was Sunday, that Trump's plans to accept a luxurious 747 from Qatar to use as Air Force One. It is the biggest foreign gift ever received by the U.S. president and our government. This is such an ethical action since Trump intends to use this plane while he's president, and then also after he leaves office. So he's going to take him with him. You can easily see this. There's tons of announcements on the internet about this. Now, the Washington Post, I think there's an excellent article that talks about even with Dodge cuts, the U.S. has spent 166 billion more than last year. So we're going to take care of the deficit? Sadly enough, no, they're not at all. 166 billion more than last year. It's spent on defense and immigration spending and continued strain on the social security of individuals that have worked hard to have that, and Medicare and Medicaid. It's added 196 billion to the deficit in the fiscal year so far. As the article points out, it is due to Trump's agenda for his 100 days, first 100 days. Imagine what we could have done with that money instead of spending it on sending immigrants to other countries where we have to pay for them to be there, since Trump hates certain immigrants and has scared Americans into believing that immigrants are dangerous. We know the stories of many people that are not criminals that are in El Salvador or soon will be in other countries. Now, if you're from South Africa, where Musk grew up, then you get to come to America. You've got to read the article in the Washington Post about 60 white Southern Africans are expected to arrive, and they have arrived at Dulles Airport this week as refugees under Trump's executive order. The Afrikaners are already risen or are already arrived on a State Department charter plan today, with federal and Virginia officials preparing to receive them in a ceremonial news conference, according to the documents and emails obtained by the Washington Post, as well as 3 government officials familiar with the preparation. Now, to me, this is a perfect example of the president saying that if you are white, you're acceptable, and particularly if you come from a country where my friend Musk grew up and lived for many years, then I'm going to allow you to come to the United States. Even though it's not published, there is no question in my mind that all 60 of these people probably had to pay something to come to the U.S., or he's so desperate to have more whites that will vote for him, he's bringing them in so he can benefit from them as the years go on. It is not near as large as Qatar plane. However, whoever pays him to do anything is unethical. Don't forget all the millionaires that came to his inauguration and paid so that he would not punish them anymore. So I think we need to think about that and realize how insane this all is. We're going to judge undocumented immigrants that have contributed to our country over and over and over again, but we're not going to let them stay because Trump is going to bring in a bunch of white people from South Africa who probably support every concept he's ever thought about. And he's buying them because they'll certainly vote for him because he brought them to the United States. Next, let's go to Trump's hate campaign that he spent extensive time talking about on his campaign. I don't know the reason people couldn't believe him. So they voted for him anyway. His newest person is attacking Senator Mark Kelly. Now, Senator Kelly is a Democratic senator from the state of Arizona, and he was one of our astronauts many years ago. And there is a newsletter from Kamala Harris in her newsletter that you will have the reference to, where Mark Kelly goes through and tells what has happened to him. Mark tells us, Trump's longtime political advisor, Roger Stone, just called for me to be charged with treason and executed. You heard it right. And executed. He said, I called out Trump. This is Mark Kelly. I called out Trump for his blatant corruption, making millions of dollars from his own crypto coins, and I co-sponsored a bill to make it illegal for the president, vice president, administrative officers, and members of Congress to do the same. In response, they sent Roger Stone after me. When I joined the Navy, I swore an oath, he says, to support and defend the Constitution. I did it again when I was sworn in as an Arizona United States Senator. I will continue to uphold that oath, and because it matters to our democracy, I will do everything I can to stop the blatant corruption in Washington. He goes on to say, guys like Donald Trump and Roger Stone are only looking out for themselves. And it's clear they're scared of the attention we're bringing to them and their corrupt deeds. I'll be honest with you, though. If Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and now Roger Stone are all lined up against me, it's going to take a big team to fight back. So, of course, the message to all of us is, if he can attack Mark Kelly, they will attack anyone that prevents them from getting what they want, which is the destruction of our democracy and the terrorizing people so much they will forget they ever had freedom of speech in this country. If you think you're safe from attacks, then you are sadly mistaken. Autocratic leaders will destroy their opposition to gain more power to do whatever they want. Here's another article. Federal judges are receiving unsolicited police deliveries, they say, are meant to intimidate them. Again, it was in the Washington Post. They're saying in this article, many of the deliveries, judges say, have gone to those presiding over lawsuits challenging the Trump's administration's policies. Delivery began in February and may number in hundreds across at least 7 states, prompting increased security concerns and a demand for Justice Department to investigate. Well, and sadly, though, the Justice Department is now headed and controlled by Trump supporters, so they will not investigate. That is the reason we will have more corrupt acts and defiant acts from Trump and his supporters, because nobody's going to investigate. The Congress, the Republican MAGA Congress, has quit, so they're not taking action on this kind of stuff. They could. The next article is from Public Citizen. And they are a legal arm of a nonprofit. And what their article is about, what does it all mean? And it's written by the co-presidents of the Public Citizen. They begin with Trump's statements on the campaign trail. I don't need anybody's money. And he goes on to say, as you may recall in this article, that what Trump said when he announced his presidential campaign on June 16, 2015, he said, I don't need anybody's money. Yes, we have now a decade into this national nightmare that he has created for all these years. He reiterated the idea that he was already so rich that we would be impervious to, he would be impervious to financial temptations as a president over and over and again. It is clearly never true what Trump says. And Trump has debased the office of president to enrich himself and his family to a degree so unprecedented and extreme that it might seem almost comical if he weren't so corrupt. So the public citizen is giving us all this information. And they go on. Among the most fragrant graphs, the grifts, are the meme coins, launched earlier this year by both Trump and his wife, Melania. For background, meme coins are a type of cryptocurrency. Digital-only money not backed by any government or bank that have little or no value, and aside from people simply being willing or being hoodwinked into spending money on them. The name originated in connection with internet memes, which is a modern graphics that go viral online. They're supposed to be humorous, and they're not most of the time. Public citizen goes on. The Trump family is reported making at least $320 million from fees they earn when people trade these various cryptocurrencies. Indeed, just last week, Trump doubled down on his solicitation for his meme coin venture, which is a major scam. Having previously offered tickets to a gala at one of his golf resorts to the 220 biggest investors in his meme. Federal law forbids presidents from soliciting gifts. And since issuing a meme coin is not a presidential act, Trump isn't even covered by the absurd immunity provision the Supreme Court fashioned out of thin air last year. So the Supreme Court can do something about all what he's doing. Now, I think that what the public citizen is saying, we've also highlighted the egregious risk inherent in the fact that since Trump's meme coins can be purchased anonymously, unknown actors, including potentially foreign governments, could in essence stuff cash into the president's pockets. So here's what one of the co-presidents said to the national media. As is often the case with this administration, the corruption and scandal is happening out in the open, right in front of our eyes. The question now is, what are our elected officials going to do to stop it? Passing legislation to fight this corruption is a great place to start. So they're asking all of us to tell Congress, and I'm going to quote them very clearly and read it to you, because I want to be sure you hear what they're saying. Donald Trump is abusing the office of president to enrich himself and his family, including via assorted crypto ventures and/or scams. Congress must pass legislation to clearly and definitively prohibit presidents, vice presidents, cabinet secretaries, members of Congress, and the immediate family members of those people from issuing so-called digital assets such as meme coins. Then the public citizen has another newsletter entitled Trump Attacks Big Bird and Cookie Monster. I don't know if y'all know, I remember Big Bird and Cookie Monster because I've seen many times about this. But last Thursday, Donald Trump took it as novelty size marker and scrambled his signature on another stupid and legally baseless executive order. Of course, he's decided he's going to attack NPR and PBS. And This is one of the claims to zero out federal funding for National Public Radio, which is NPR, and the Public Broadcasting System, PBS, because it's very evident. He's going to try to destroy anything that has news that would be opposite what he's going to put on his other broadcasts that are outright lies about what's happening. Why is Trump doing this? There are many Republicans that have tried to attack NPR and PBS. It's because trumpets are desperate to eliminate any source of objective news that honestly reports on the stupid, cruel, and illegal things the regime does. Public Citizen goes on to say, because trumpets can't stand how programs like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood teach kids that it's okay to have feelings and to be empathetic to other human beings. Because trumpets know that a thriving, independent public media system, the bulwark of democracy, is fundamentally at odds with their project of autocracy, corruption, and power. Now, for decades, Republicans have been ranting about money going to NPR or PBS. Never mind that the amount of funding for public radio and television is not even a drop in the bucket of overall federal spending. And never mind that those same Republicans are, as we speak, actively plotting to increase the Pentagon's budget by tens of billions of dollars. It is important for you to read this article because the value of NPR and PBS is very evident to many, many people in America. And there's a great article called Trump and Many GOP Lawmakers Want to End All Funding for NPR and PBS, unraveling a U.S. public media system that took a century to build. This article was published in the Conversations, and you will get it in all my references. I really like the author of it, Josh Shepard. I think he's outstanding. You need to know the tremendous value that NPR and PBS offer Americans. Their programs are not mega Republican extremism and lies about what is happening in America. They tell the truth. The CPB has already sued Trump's administration over its attempt to oust 3 of their board members. And the CPB says very clearly, we're an independent organization and not a federal agency. The federal government can't dictate who serves on our board. Trump's executive order will be challenged in court, of course, and is the case with all executive orders he's done so far. They can be easily rescinded when we finally get a new president. My question for you as listeners, did you vote for Trump to use money that is our federal government money the way he's using it? Spending billions of dollars because he wants to send people out of the country, but he's going to spend more money by bringing some of his white people in. Did you agree to allow him to withhold the money because he wants to destroy any organization that does not adhere to the Trump's view of who or what is acceptable? Trump wants one sick and destructive message that is his and mega message that supports corruption and extreme points of view. And I'm not even going to talk about the person that he put ahead of the media he wants to create. She's not only insanely crazy, but she is extremely destructive. Now, the dangers of adolescent power in politics and governance is the thing that I want to talk about most. The Atlantic had a wonderful article, February 26, 2025, The Adolescent Style in American Politics, by Jill Popovic. the subtitle was "The Vision of Manhood Placed on Display by Trump and His Aides is One Image by Teenage Boys." Now, when I first read this article in February, I thought, there's going to come a time where I really want to use this article. And it is a perfect time to let you know about what Trump, his administration, all the people that are controlling Congress, and progressively every agency in the federal government is doing. It's a very clear adolescent concept about what they're doing. I have a PhD in counseling psychology, so this article makes tremendous sense to me. Here's what they say. To a certain kind of guy, Donald Trump epitomizes masculine cool. He's ostentatiously wealthy. He's married to his third model wife. He gets prime tickets and UFC fights, goes on popular podcasts, and does more or less whatever he wants without any consequences. That certain kind of guy who sees Trump as a masculine idol, that guy is a teenage boy. And much has been written about Trump's widening appeal to men, and to young men in particular. MAGA, the story goes, is making masculinity great again, but that's not what I see at all. The version of masculinity on display, not just from Trump, but from many of his close advisors and appointees, is the kind of traditional manhood championed by men that are immature. And the kind of manhood that I appreciate and the kind that I think we need in America are men who are mature and discerning men who care about people and the world they live in. Now, although, of course, plenty of the adolescent boys do not look up to Trump, at his core, Trump is an adolescent president. I'm repeating it again, surrounded by adolescent flunkies. They're also funky, but flunkies cheered into office by adolescent men. Now, Lawrence Steinberg, an excellent professor of psychology at Temple University, is widely known for talking about adolescent development. And he explains adolescence as the following. It's a developmental mismatch between the development of the brain systems that are used for self-control and self-regulation and the development of brain systems that respond to reward and that generate emotions and perhaps lead to impulsive behavior. And there are times when men develop only that side of reward, and we're going to do impulsive behavior. In the MAGA movement, though, an adolescent way of moving through the world is, okay, I can have high risk, low regulation, which we're hearing all these millionaires talk about, and near total preventing myself from having anything that inhibits me from doing what I want to do. So it characterizes MAGA leaders and their thrilled followers. Now, in the United States, manhood in a traditional sense has been distinguished from boyhood and adolescence partly by virtue and obligation. Boys may be boys and teachers may run around thrill seeking, but real men are expected to provide for themselves and their families, protect those they love, and demonstrate a kind of moral fortitude that justifies their familial and social authority. There are all kinds of problems with this traditional model, and as a feminist, I can name many of them. But the masculinity of MAGA is far worse than anything I've ever seen. And the author of this article says the same. Because the MAGA masculinity, they reject commitment and virtue, but still demand power and respect. There's a New York Times article, too, that quote, that the masculine, in this particular article from the New York Times, the masculinity of someone unburdened by duty, obligation, or real responsibility. And that's the reason we're seeing all this insane behavior. Philip Provic, she's given this example. Peter Hegseth. He was confirmed as the defense secretary by the narrowest margin in history. Says he wants a military full of men who are uninhibited warriors, free of any attempt to impose moral order on the team, and 20-something men who generally do the nation's fighting. He's written a book about it. He envisions a similar lack of continuance or presence of maturity in their personal life. And he is currently married to the woman he impregnated while he was still married to his second wife, who herself was the mistress he married after cheating on his first wife. Now, they joke in this article and say, life is complicated and marriage is more complicated still. But a series of extramarital affairs, something that is also characteristic of the present's personal life, is not typically the mark of a respectable, responsible adult male. Elon Musk is a keyboard warrior more than hardened soldier. He's cut from a similar cloth. He too has fathered many children with many different women. And he too seeks power without responsibility. This is what has made this so crazy with what he's done, with attempting to change all the federal agency. His arrogance and his delusion about what he can do is disastrous. It's easy to see a teenager's bravado in his actions, the lack of control and self-awareness, the inability to grasp what one may be incapable of doing. Musk is notorious for sharing edgelord memes on X, the kinds of things that might be passed around by teenage boys. He also has a remarkably juvenile sense of humor. I really appreciate what this woman is saying in her articles. As these psychologically adolescent men work together, they fuel one another's worst impulses. Much of Steinberg's work is research on juvenile offenders, adolescent boys and young men. According to crime statistics, commit a huge disproportionate number of crimes, and they commit their crimes in groups disproportionately. Steinberg said, when they're with their buddies, there's a tendency to engage in reckless and risky behavior, and it is amplified. So that's what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. Perhaps this midlife return to the trappings of adolescence was an inevitable evolution for a millennial man whose success came so early and so spectacularly that catapulted him into the world of serious adults before he was completely ready. But it's also not difficult to speculate that an immature cultural moment spurred on by Trump's election is what turned Zuckerberg, who must, not so long ago, called him a Zuck the Cuck, from a native techno optimist 20-something into a middle-aged man in gold chain giving opinions about masculine energy. This kind of impulsivity also seems evident in the acts of Trump's administration. When Trump is given the freedom to speak off the cuff, but it seems clear enough that to the president, the risk of announcing a half-baked plan, not to mention the risk of the plan itself, paled in comparison to the potential payoffs, which largely amount to wanting attention. His narcissism and his sociopathic behavior have become more and more evident the more corrupt he is. You can look at the definition. A narcissist who turns into being as corrupt as he is and wanting so much power is sociopathic. The skills of adult life, emotional presence, more accurate risk perception, self-control, and greater precision in future forecasting are developed in adolescence through the physical changes in the brain and body system, but also through guidance and experience. And that is very apparent that most of these men have not gotten guidance. Some have turned their sights to Trump. The president embodies both the adulthood that is the stuff of teenagers' fantasies, private jets, models, 2 Big Macs for dinner, and the punishing father who men wise enough to understand their own need for greater discipline imagine will whip everyone into shape. What I think is very disturbing is at a Trump rally in Georgia, Tucker Carlson offered this disciplinarian daddy version of Trump returning to the White House. Dad comes home, Carlson told the crowd. He's pissed. Dad is pissed. And when Dad gets home, do you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vicious spanking right now. The crowd broke into a chant of Daddy's home. Mel Gibson used the same metaphor after Trump visited a fire-ravaged Los Angeles. It's like Daddy arrived and he's taking his belt off, he said. The phrase is so disgusting, and yet it's a part of the MAGA circle. The Roseanne Barr, donning blonde dreadlocks and heavily reliant on auto-tune, courted a post-election rap titled Daddy's Home. Now, this adolescent behavior is gone way beyond anything we need to put up with. We are at a pivotal moment in American history where the line between democratic principles and autocratic power is becoming dangerously blurred. The adolescent mentality exemplified by Donald Trump and his supporters, their impulsivity, their self-serving, and destructiveness threaten to dismantle the very institution that holds up our freedom. As we face this unprecedented challenge, it is critical to recognize that the future of our democracy rests in the hands of each one of us. We cannot afford to be passive. It is time for us to march. It is time for us to call our Congress representatives. It is time, whether they listen or not, to keep bombarding them and telling them this is outrageous. It is totally unacceptable what Trump, his administration, and what the Congress is doing. We must act now. We have to stand up against corruption, like Mark Kelly, and reinforce a commitment to the Constitution and the rule of law that Mark Kelly talked about. This is not just a battle for political power. It is a fight for the soul of our nation. So I am asking you to stand up, speak out, and vote, because our democracy depends on it. Thank you for listening.